Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Ali Bouhouch, co-founder and CTO at the Good Data Factory. Ali, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you, Ali?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, Ali, looking forward to this conversation. You've been building enterprise scale AI systems since before most companies even had data strategies. What fundamental lessons have stuck with you from that early work that today's AI leaders still haven't learned?
I think it's a couple things. AI is not a panacea. It's a tool, and it's a very powerful tool, but it's not there to solve all your problems. You need to have a decent understanding of capabilities, but also have an equally clear understanding of where the opportunities are within your organization, within your business model to leverage data and algorithmic power. And it's important that we demystify it to that level, rid of the hype and get real with what's available today as opposed to the pipe dreams that the marketing machines are selling everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. There's a lot of things that can get lost in translation. Hype. It's always people try to take advantage of a lot of the things that happen in terms of the innovation. But when you look at, for example, this transition, when you think back to your transition from traditional enterprise IT into agentic and sovereign AI, what was the turning point that made you realize the old way of deploying AI simply wouldn't work?
Well, for me personally, I've always been data driven, even from the old days of Excel spreadsheet. I love to have data that backs up my hypotheses, my projects, my business plans. I'm just built that way. So from that perspective, what was clear to me is you got to start with data. That's why when we put together our company, the Data Factory, we did not want the word AI or algorithms to be anywhere in the company name because we really believe that at the foundation of algorithms are as good as the data they're trained on. I don't care how sophisticated the algorithm is, you train it on poor data, biased data, incomplete data, and it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. That principle hasn't changed. And I don't think it's going to change in the future. So if you lead with data, that's one, and you lead also with architecture. And here I don't mean architecture as in a particular architecture, as in client server architecture, microservices. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an architectural thinking, systems thinking. That I'm looking at my enterprise as a business system. It has a system for generating value and delivering it to whoever my customer is. And I need to understand that and understand the data flow within that system and see where are the opportunities where I can inject intelligent automation that takes advantage of the available data that I have and can tremendously impact either my operations or the interactions I have with my customers or how I source my products and services. At the end of the day, I have to touch the value creation and delivery if I'm going to have a successful project.
Now, you often talk about sovereignty, not just of data, but of decision making. How do you help enterprise leaders rewire their thinking around control when they've spent decades outsourcing core intelligence, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting because sovereignty is not something we started with, but we started talking to customers in regulated industries, mostly in financial industry. And suddenly this idea of not only data privacy, but if I'm an investment bank and I'm doing part of my portfolio is actually algorithmic trading, one of my edges is my data and the algorithms that I use to trade. And if those are not something that I have full control over, then I'm very at a high risk of losing my competitive edge. So that's when people start thinking about, so what are the limits? What is the perimeter of sovereignty? And that's where we expanded it from people thinking about sovereignty just as in, oh, this model, I need to deploy it on my servers within my secure perimeter. That's not enough because who has developed that algorithm for you? Do you have ownership of the IP for that algorithm, or are they free to sell it to somebody else? What was that algorithm trained on? Was it generally available data, or is it your proprietary data, data on your customers, your transactions? And guess what? If it was trained on that data, and you don't own it, your competition now has access to the benefits of all of that data that it was trained on. And people's eyes just widen like you've struck them on the head with this new realization. And that's what we started focusing on that because we saw that there is a huge gap, both in terms of decision makers understanding this, as well as solution providers actually providing sovereign solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's not, it's not clear for many. And I think that could cost in the long term, it could cost a lots of time, money, and effort. Now, in a world where most of AI is built on borrowed infrastructure and APIs, what does own your own AI truly means in practice?
Well, it means owning the whole stack. I mean, from the actual design, the data, the algorithm, as well as the infrastructure on which you're running it. And of course, I understand that not everybody can afford that, right? But for businesses whose data is strategic to their business model, again, in this case, for example, an investment bank that has a large investment portfolio, you're talking about portfolios that are in the billions of dollars. If they cannot afford to own their infrastructure, then they have a problem, right? And if you think about it, the investments in terms of infrastructure and owning your own sovereign AI, we're talking about a 32% difference in terms of cost, no more than that. And for most of these businesses, the ROI is obvious and the risk mitigation to their stakeholders is actually paramount.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you're helping build sovereign AI infrastructures in the world where geopolitics and compliance shifts happening in real time. And think about like where this is going. Uh, what fundamental shifts do you see happening here and change how global enterprises approach AI ownership?
I can tell you that we were dealing with um, a sovereign fund in the Gulf cooperation countries in the Middle East who ended up having to strike a three-way deal uh, with a data center provider, with a GPU provider, and with us as a primary contractor who can deliver both the architecture and the model so that we can build for them actually a sovereign data center and sovereign AI infrastructure on top of that. The funny thing is that had to go through all kinds of government regulations on both sides, including our side in the US, in terms of making sure you go through the State Department, that you're getting the appropriate export permits, and to make sure that the receiving country has actually the US Department of State blessings to receive that specific technology. And that's the reality of geopolitics of the day today.
Yeah. Um, so you work with the retail and telcos and you're actually in communities like the Retail AI Council and AI 2030. What's a conversation, a strategic question that you think enterprise leaders are completely missing in the AI discourse?
The unfortunate reality is that the majority of enterprise leaders are in a reactive mode. I was talking to such an executive last month, and he was telling me he just got out of a board meeting where the board is saying, next board meeting, you better have an AI strategy and you better present it and it better have some feet to stand on, right? So what does he do? He runs to the usual suspects, the big five consulting companies, to prepare a strategy document for him. the board slides, but that's pretty much what he's got a clue about what is the readiness of his organization to actually take that strategy and execute on it. He has no idea of what the implications of actually taking those undertakings, both in terms of financial investments and operational commitments, in terms of teams and execution, and what it means to what he's actually at the end liable for, which is quarterly results for a publicly listed company. And unfortunately, that's the typical. The typical is that what leaders are to be doing is first to start thinking there are seismic shifts happening in every industry. And let's take retail, for example. And question I should be asking as a retail leader is, what does retail look like in 5 years? What does the retail consumer look like in terms of a behavioral profile, in terms of their choice of interaction with my brand or my goods and services? What does the supply chain that I rely on to have the products and services delivered to my customers, what does that look like in 5 years? And then create the next generation business models, operating models that will support that new reality. And then come back and say, what are the technologies available today that are going to be able to help me efficiently deliver those operating models, those business models? And definitely AI is one of them. Now, subtly in that context, AI is not just a tool in the toolbox. You've got different criteria for what success looks like before you even decide to choose what algorithm you're going to use, what provider, what approach. Am I going to build a data lake or not? Because you're letting your business vision, your business model, your operating model dictate what success looks like, as opposed
Very
to
well said.
what your vendors are telling you success looks like.
Yeah, very well said, Ali. This is truly amazing because when you are asking quality questions like you just laid it out, you get quality outcome,
Absolutely.
and not the other way around. So I truly appreciate your time, Ali. I always like to ask. This is a short format conversation that I do with my guests. Thank you for joining me in this Bold Talk series. These are some great insights. And part of the last question I always ask to my guests is about the word bold. What does that mean to you personally?
Well, as you can see, I am both physically as well as in terms of personality. But really, I think the key thing about being bold is having the courage to ask the right questions and having the courage to make the tough decisions. That's to me what defines boldness. Because most of us as leaders would rather stick with the comfort zone, with the tried and true, with the best practice, as opposed to ask the tough questions, take on the challenging risks that actually have the most potential for having differentiated rewards. And part of that boldness is being willing to live with the consequences of your decisions, right or wrong. And that's unfortunately something we're starting to lose in our culture, in the business culture, which is business leaders are becoming experts at evading accountability and making sure they have next layer of lieutenants who can take the fall for them. And that's why we're not seeing the bold visions being crafted or the bold moves in the market that we used to see with the classic leaders of the last decades.
Very well said. I believe that Ali is not just in the business, but also in general, like from a politics to a list goes on. It goes back to this old saying, they say good time they bring bad leaders. Bad leaders bring hard time, and hard time brings a good leader. So we're truly in a cycle that we have a bad leadership altogether, and I think it's time to fix it. So hopefully we'll see that happening soon. Ali, thank you so much for being part of this Bold Talk series. I truly enjoyed it. There's some great insights for everyone who's listened to this podcast. Have a great summer. Until next time, take care, be great, and be bold always. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.